Good afternoon, distinguished delegates. It's now 4 minutes exactly past 2 p.m. and I would like to request that we start the program. Your Excellency, the Minister of ICT of Cameroon, Your Excellency, the African Union Commissioner, the ITU-R Director, the representatives from the Ericsson and the GSMA, all the member states present, associate members, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. As we begin this program, kindly allow me to welcome each and every one of us to the launch of the first set of the ATU spectrum recommendations that were developed with a focus on transforming Africa into a knowledge economy. And before we start this program, please allow me to announce one or two housekeeping rules, and one of which is the interpretation services. Kindly be informed that we are offering interpretation services in 2 languages, English and French. May you go to the bottom of your screen and you will find a button written interpretation. Kindly choose the preferred language, English or French. It is also preferred that all the speakers turn on their videos, especially when they are speaking. The rest of the delegates are kindly requested to make sure that they are on mute. And if you are speaking, you are kindly requested to speak slowly so that the speakers are able to interpret clearly the message. And if someone has a burning question, perhaps that can come at the end of the program, but you are highly encouraged to use the chat section of the platform to share or to raise any issue, and the General Secretariat will endeavor to respond. Otherwise, without much ado, kindly allow me to call upon the ATU Secretary General, Mr. John Omo, to give his remarks and to take over the rest of the program. Secretary General, Mr. Omo, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Alice. Just confirm my audibility.
You are audible enough.
Thank you.
Very
Thank
clear.
you very much. Excellency, the Minister for Posts and Telecommunications of the Republic of Cameroon, Madame Lebom Lily Keng, Excellency, the AU Commissioner responsible for this field, Dr. Amani Abu Zaid, Excellency and a trusted friend of the African Telecommunications Union and of Africa, Mr. Mario Manjevic, the ITU-R Director, Valerie Atu, the APM 23-1 Bureau Chair, and the Validation Forum Chair and your team, the Chair of the Task Group on Spectrum Recommendations, Dr. Mohamed Mongazi. I hope the Ramadan is Mubarak for you, and your team, heads of Sub-Regional Radio Communications Bureau, representative of the Ericsson, the key partner in this work, Shafiq Trabolsi, representative of the GSMA, our friend Kamal Tamawa, delegates of member states, delegates of associate members, delegations from sub-regional organizations, ladies and gentlemen. I'm quite delighted to welcome all of you to this historic event. Today, we launched the very first set of ITU recommendations in the area of radio communications, which is quite a culmination of an extremely engaging and absorbing process that I greatly remain proud of. As we chart the path towards the attainment of the African Union vision of an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa driven by its own citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global arena, the idea of a harmonized and optimal use of radio spectrum resource is one that we have to follow up and develop well as we seek to enhance connectivity for socio-economic development and well-being of our people. The African Union's Agenda 2060 gives the roadmap on which our development initiatives should be anchored. And based on this agenda, the African ICT ministers did inaugurate the African Digital Trust Strategy in the year 2019 in Egypt. In that strategy, radio communications is recognized as a key engine for the delivery of the various initiatives under that strategy. And so it is against that backdrop that we at the ATU thought it wise that we should, working with the membership, develop recommendations on which we can all harness this important resource in the development of our ICTs. As players in the African ICT sector, we have a lot to do to enhance the growth of ICT in our continent. This includes bridging the digital gap based on location or gender stereotypes and connecting those that are still unconnected. We therefore need to take advantage of all the available resources that will contribute to the realization of this endeavor. And spectrum is one such valuable resource. And due to its infinite nature, we have to constantly apply our minds to the need for its efficient use. As a resource, spectrum highly influences the quality of life and greatly contributes to the access and use of ICTs by individuals and communities in all spheres of life, be it in urban, rural, agriculture, education, as we have seen increasingly with the current health pandemic that we have. It is the most important medium of transmission on which several technologies are developed and based. This is through this is in recognition that various technologies are dependent on that resource. For example, mobile technology and e-commerce in boosting our economies and transforming our lives. I must emphasize that the transboundary nature of spectrum calls upon us to work together in order to harmonize radio communication systems in terms of utilization, security, and interoperability to enable us to reap the maximum benefits out of the resource. That way, we become flexible enough to accommodate new and proven efficient ways of spectrum management. We have technologies such as Internet of Things, machine learning, robotics, etc., which are recognized in the African Digital Strategy as capable, when adopted properly, to enable Africa to leapfrog certain development stages. As a people, we can choose to maintain the status quo and miss out on the available opportunities, or we can work together and reap the benefits of spectrum as a resource. And my belief is that cooperating and working together is the more reasonable route to walk. In that regard, experts from across the continent have dedicated their time to the development of these recommendations. I have confidence in the contents of the recommendations and their ability to address the spectrum challenges and needs of African countries. In this regard, I'm pleased to note that the first set of these radio communications being launched today deal with recommendation 001-0 on spectrum audit, ATU-R Recommendation 002-0 on spectrum licensing for mobile / broadband systems, ATU-R Recommendation 003-0 on spectrum evolution for mobile / broadband systems, and Recommendation 004-0 on spectrum management principles for national broadband spectrum plans, including licensing roadmaps and emerging and future spectrum development. The recommendations, as I've said, were drafted by our own experts, of course, with the assistance sometimes from the ITU. And the work of the product of that work is what we are witnessing today. So I want to thank all the partners that have been involved, including, of course, Ericsson, because these recommendations were subsequently validated by our own experts at a forum that was held on 4th and 5th of March this year. On our end, due to the important role, as I've mentioned, as recognized in the African Digital Transformation Blueprint, spectrum is recognized as a key driver to the digital transformation in Africa. And for that reason, we have launched a couple of projects and initiatives geared at ensuring efficient use of spectrum within our continent. For example, the strategy for acquisition, retention, and optimum use of satellite resources in Africa. The second one being the African Spectrum Allocation Plan. The third one being the Geneva 84 optimization of FM bands in Africa. The other one being implementation of emerging ICT technologies in Africa, including 5G, and spectrum recommendations for rural connectivity. We've also of late trained a number of our radio experts on the application of modern and economic methods on spectrum management. And we do this due to the belief that spectrum is indeed a key resource that can enable rapid rollout of ICT services in Africa. And so at the backdrop of the recommendations that we are launching today, work is also going on concurrently on the areas that I've just mentioned. Notably today, we have received certain inquiries in terms of the efficacy or the force with which these recommendations can be applied. Suffice to say that we do not, as an organization, seek to interfere with the sovereignty of member states or the freedom of the membership in terms of managing their organizations. But allow me to clarify that while they may not, as a matter of force, be binding on our organizations, the adoption may therefore be, based on the goodwill of the membership. But I do believe that given the participatory nature that has informed the development of these recommendations, they have acquired some force of reason. And because of that, we do believe that the goodwill of the membership will be enough to ensure their active implementation. Now, today marks a Watershed Day for girls in ICT. The globe is celebrating the involvement of girls in ICT. And so as we celebrate this day, I would like to commend our member states for taking up various activities in commemoration of this key event. I also would like to appreciate all the lady colleagues in our midst who are an inspiration to our young girls, starting with yourself, Hon Minister for Posts and Telecommunications of Cameroon. You blessed us consistently with your presence when called upon to do so, and we sincerely thank you for that, Your Excellency, for being available in our midst all the time when called upon to do so. I also need to recognize the very dynamic AUC Commissioner in charge of our area, Dr. Amani Abu Zaid, for the role that she keeps playing in our midst, and more so in inspiring ladies in this field. I'm sure we all recognize the need for our young girls to actively prepare for careers in this field, because when our time comes, we will need people who will carry the vision that we hold dear. Therefore, as we'll celebrate this day, may we reflect on how we can deal with the root cause of the existing gender divide in areas that we have the capacity to influence change. And so with these remarks, allow me to kickstart the program by asking the chair of our APM 1, Valerie, in his capacity in that regard, and as the chair of the validation forum, to say a few words, and then I will get to the next speakers. Valerie, over to you.
Je voudrais, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Secrétaire Général. Je voudrais m'assurer que je suis bien écouté. Allô?
Hello.
Oui, continuez.
OK, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Secrétaire Général, pour la
Thank you, Secretary General, for giving me the floor. Good morning and hello to every participant. The Minister for Post and Telecommunication for the Republic of Cameroon, the Secretary General of the ATU, the Director of the Bureau, all the other participants present in your titles and ranks. I'm taking the floor as the chair of the Forum Bureau for the validation of the recommendations of the spectrum, which are actually the objective of the meeting today. This forum, which brought together on the 4th and 5th of March, 94 participants from the ATU. This office, as I said, it is the same one that led the work of drafting the African common positions to be presented at the upcoming meeting.
Je rappelle, je serai obligé de mettre le micro.
I'll have to put the microphone on. Thank you. Sorry. I was just pointing out the office that led, the bureau that led the work of the first meeting. One of the key decisions of this meeting was the creation of certain working groups on the following thematic areas: recommendations on spectrum, emerging technologies, spectrum for connectivity, strategy for management of spectrum resources, and the African Plan for Spectrum Management. Sorry, the speaker is breaking so much we can't follow. Chair, you would want to request the speaker to be a bit clear. We can't follow.
Valerie, if you could speak audibly, the interpretation team can't follow you. Valerie?
Est-ce que vous me suivez maintenant?
Oui.
Oui, je veux m'améliorer. J'espère que ce n'est pas un problème de connexion parce que je n'utilise pas la connexion habituelle.
I suspect it could be a connection problem. Dr. Mohamed Mugazi subsequently came to the drafting of these, on the point of drafting of these recommendations. So as I start my speech, Secretary General, I would want to point out the cordial environment within which this work was carried out by the working group and the forum. The COVID pandemic enabled us to come up with new methods. And these new methods have proven quite effective. I would want, on behalf of the forum, to acknowledge the honor that was bestowed on us to carry out such an important task through bringing up the recommendations. I also wish to recognize and acknowledge all that played various roles to make sure that this document comes out. And all this work of experts that has led to the results that we are looking at today have a very critical role to play in the area of communication. So CAGES, who availed to the experts all the necessary materials and guidance. So that is why I would thank you. Thank you.
Dr. Mungazi, sorry, Valerie, are you done?
Valérie, est-ce que... Yes, I've concluded my remarks.
Thank you very much, Valerie, for your kind words in terms of the role that the Secretariat has played in the development of these recommendations. Allow me, knowing her busy schedule, allow me to invite Her Excellency, the Commissioner in charge of our area, Dr. Amani Abu Zain, to kindly take the floor.
Thank you very much, John. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. Allow me at the outset to wish everybody a happy Ramadan, happy Easter if you're Orthodox, and happy Easter if you've celebrated Easter a few weeks ago. It is really a great pleasure to be with you today. Madame la Ministre, Minette Libon,
Madam Minister, Minister for Post and Telecommunication of Cameroon.
Friends and partners from ITU, from GSMA, from Ericsson, the chairs, Dr. Mohamed Moghazi and Monsieur Valérie Atu, the different experts and partners and all participants here, all protocol observed. It is really a very important occasion, and I'm really happy to be with you because it is one of those days where we confirm and reaffirm again the important role that ATU plays. And in this, I would like to particularly recognize my brother, the Secretary General, John Otto, and his team for his leadership and engagement in coordinating initiatives and in pursuing the highly important work that they're doing, especially now, and especially in these difficult times. And this is to serve and to the whole of Africa and to ensure the well-being of all. And that's the purpose and the mission of the African Union at large. But as I said, ATU role has never been more important than it is today. I would like to congratulate everybody for the and the experts that who have worked hard together with our partners to elaborate the recommendations, which for sure will enhance the efficient use of radio spectrum and pave the way for additional and other initiatives to help African countries to efficiently and effectively use this scarce but valuable resource to ensure maximum benefit for all. Distinguished participants, the vision of the African Union, as you know, is a peaceful, integrated, prosperous Africa, driven by its own citizens, to take up its rightful place in the global community. And I'm sure you know that digital transformation is an important enabler to the attainment of this vision, as it will foster innovative, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth and social progress across the continent. The digital revolution is therefore a great opportunity for our countries and for our continent to harness the potential of new technologies to address our development challenges. And as my brother has just, John Omo just mentioned in his opening remarks, the digital transformation strategy of Africa ensured an important place for spectrum and for the work of ATU. However, achieving the digital transformation will require affordable and universal access to broadband connectivity. And this is why digital infrastructure is a foundation pillar of this digital transformation strategy for Africa. Indeed, radio spectrum is a scarce and common resource that needs an efficient, rational, and harmonized utilization at regional and continental levels to avoid cross-border interference and ensure the well-functioning of all the services and sectors depending on this spectrum. Identifying the African interest and priorities, as well as the building of common positions on spectrum-related issues ahead of the World Radio Communication Conference is of strategic importance for us in Africa, since wireless connectivity is a complementary and alternative solution to reach and connect the underserved and rural areas. Distinguished participants, the global COVID-19 crisis showed both the weaknesses and the strength and the resilience of Africa. But during this crisis, Africa has embraced as never before the use of digital technologies on an unprecedented scale to keep people safe, as well as to ensure continuity of general life, of businesses, of education. However, the pandemic has also highlighted the urgent need for us to bridge the digital gap between and within countries to ensure equal opportunities for people to access the basic services and to access this this service, which became almost a lifeline. And without this service, we wouldn't have been meeting today, for instance. This exceptional moment has shown the resilience of internet as well as the shortcomings of our internet infrastructure. It also revealed the need to ensure the readiness of the continent's infrastructure to help mitigate those challenges and come up with comprehensive policy and regulatory recommendations that enable our governments and regulators to create a stronger internet and safer internet to help Africa, not only during the pandemic time, but more importantly, during the recovery time post-COVID-19. In this regard, and as I started, the role of ATU is even greater and more important. And we are relying on the support and the work of ATU in coordinating the development of harmonized policies and adequate regulatory frameworks on the use and management of radio spectrum to sustain and enable the digital connectivity across Africa. So ATU can take also the lead in implementing some of the activities within our emergency plan, but also many of the recommendations that our honorable ministers have adopted in 2020. So the role played by ATU, as I said, never been more important, and is very much at the heart of the emergency and recovery strategy of the continent at large. For our part, I mean, at the Commission, at the African Union Commission, we will continue not only to advocate, but to work towards the creation of this harmonized environment necessary to guarantee investments and financing in order to close the digital infrastructure gap and achieve an accessible, affordable, and secure broadband across demography, across gender and geography. And I was very happy that Mr. Omo mentioned gender. I think this is an important factor and element in our work. In conclusion, allow me again to commend the leadership of Mr. Jum Omo, of the whole ATU team, all the experts, all the partners that contributed to the development of the recommendations and the work that we are seeing today. And I look forward to their effective implementation. And I thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner, for your kind words. Allow me now quickly to get to the chairman of the task team, Dr. Mungazi. If you could kindly just highlight, make a few highlights to the Commissioner, to the Director of Radio Bureau, and Her Excellency the Minister, the substantive contents of the recommendations in brief. Thank you, Doc. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Mr. Omo, ATU Secretary General, Mr. Atu, Africa Radio Spectrum Chair, Her Excellency Dr. Amani Abu Zaid, AUC Commissioner, Mr. Mario Manovic, ITU-R Director, and Her Excellency Madame Lepon, Minister of Post and Telecommunication of the Republic of Cameroon. It is a great privilege for me to witness such day where we manage to show the whole world what Africa can achieve and how the ATU has been instrumental in highlighting Africa's unique capabilities in the international spectrum management realm. It's not a surprise that despite of the COVID pandemic and the lockdown, we were able to draft the first set of ATU spectrum recommendations, only a few months after Africa hosted the World Radio Communication Conference for the first time in history, and also after ATU and the African countries played an important and critical role in reaching consensus in most WRC 19 agenda items. Indeed, I'm quite grateful to all of the African countries for providing me with this unique opportunity to serve our people. I salute the ATU leadership for such big transformation in a very short time. And I'm also very thankful to my administration, Egypt, and for the National Telecom Regulatory Authority of Egypt, NTRA, for providing all the possible support for me and for the task group. Our work wouldn't be completed without the wise advice and help of the ATU Technical Counselor, Mr. Kezias Mwali, who has been always at the disposal of the group. Ms. Anna Kinywanji, my Vice Chair, has been always playing an important role during the management meetings and showed excellent leadership skills that confirm the urgent need for gender equality in all levels of ATU groups. The four distinguished rapporteurs, Mr. Dick Sono of South Africa, Mr. Alfred Joseph of Uganda, Mr. Gabriel Kofi of Cote d'Ivoire, and Mr. Wilson Bukatola of Congo have been indeed up to their task. I was very fortunate to work with them during the last month. Of course, we wouldn't be here today without the support of our partners from the industry who have been always supporting the meeting to create something that is useful for the whole African continent. I humbly suggest to the ATU leadership to continue their excellent efforts in coordinating African projects in cooperation with the industry for the benefit of our people. And of course, at the disposal of the African countries at any time. Viva la Africa. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Doc, for those kind comments. You have just put me in one trouble with the commissioner here. That bureau was not very representative, but I hope you'll make good the next time. Allow me to just ask the Rex briefly. We have 15 minutes for all this, starting with IACO, Andrew Kisaka. Andrew, you are listening to me? Go ahead.
Yeah, I can get you. Firstly, I have to apologize. My facing challenges to my camera.
Proceed, we can hear you.
Dr. Aman Abud, and also Mr. Dr. Mohamed Mogas, and all African member states. I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone, and to start with, allow me to comment on behalf of IACO the excellent work which have been done by Atu Task Group on spectrum recommendation, which covers a most important aspect of spectrum, namely spectrum audit, spectrum licensing for mobile broadband system, spectrum evolution for mobile broadband system, spectrum management principle for national broadband, spectrum plan, including licensing roadmap. They have done a wonderful job. So what I can say, this is a start. We have started well a journey of doing our own work, collecting ideas among ourselves, and coming up with our own program related with African environment. I think we need to cultivate this spirit and make sure we develop foundations which is sustainable. This was an excellent work which we need to commend and congratulate ourselves, especially Atu and all those who participated in this work. Maybe to finish, what I can say, the IACO sub-region recognized the potential benefit of the generated ATU-R recommendation, and the sub-region supports this ITU recommendation that will act as reference in the management of the spectrum in IACO sub-region. I have to say that the IACO sub-regional full supports this ATU-R recommendation, and we will ensure that these recommendations are communicated to the policy maker. Thank you, and thank you very much for Atu and all of us. We have to be proud of ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew Kisaka. Let me call Ekas Abdurrahmane Haja. Abdurrahmane.
Merci, Monsieur le Secrétaire Général.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. I hope that everybody is getting me.
Proceed.
Okay, merci beaucoup. Madame.
Thank you once again. Honorable Minister of Post and Telecommunications of Cameroon, the Secretary General of ATU, the African Union Commissioner, Dr. Amani Abud, the Director of the Bureau of Telecommunication, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to say that it's an honor for me to take the floor in front of the group of experts of ECAS, as well as other experts. I would like to say that we support and we are proud of the quality work that was done to produce the first series of the ATU recommendations. As we remember during the last meeting, the last preparatory meeting of there was a strong recommendation that we should support our member states in the implementation of the World Radio Conference recommendations, and this is done through development of a certain number of tools that should support the process of spectrum management in our administrations. And therefore, we started the initiative that was taken by ATU to put in place a working group to develop recommendations as far as the management of spectrum is concerned. The process was very particular because it capitalized on learning, and there was also exchange of experience between participants. The experience was also collaborative because we were different administrations, and the industry also participated in this process. And the results are very good, and therefore I would like to say that the experts from Central Africa totally support this work because they took part in it, and commitment has been taken to implement the different recommendations. Therefore, we would like to congratulate and encourage the team that did this work, is the ATU team that did this work, and we are available to continue working so that our organization can continue shining. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for expressing support on behalf of the Central African countries. Allow me to recognize ECOWAS, Bernard Okram. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon to you all. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. On behalf of the chair of ECOWAS sub-region and the member states, we are delighted to witness the official launch of phase 1 of the first set of Atu recommendations, spectrum recommendation, which borders on the mobile service. This is a step in the right direction, considering the technological trends and challenges in the telecom regulator and administrations face in assigning scarce resource. We could like to congratulate the Atu leadership and Ericsson for the initiative, which will go a long way to aid members in their respective developmental agenda in the area of spectrum audits, spectrum licensing for mobile and broadband, spectrum evolution for mobile, as well as spectrum management principle for national broadband development. The ECOWAS member states are in support of this recommendation, which will serve as references to the management of spectrum for individual administrations and further promote harmonization, economic of skills, and avoidance of harmful interference among member states. These recommendations are also intended to ensure the necessary performance and quality in operating radio communication systems and seek ways and means to conserve spectrum and ensure flexibility for future expansion and new technology development. Our special thanks go to the tax group chair, Dr. Muhammad El Mugazi, and his team, the vice chair, the rapporteurs from various sub-regions, as well as member states who provided inputs and contributions and worked tirelessly to make the ITU recommendation a reality. Before I hand over to the chair, I want to say on behalf of ECOWAS, we are in total support of this recommendation and wish all member states, associate members and partners a memorable official launch of the first set of Atu recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard, for your expression of support on behalf of the ECOWAS country. Let me now call Wael Said. Wael, if you can hear me on behalf of North Africa. Go ahead.
Thank you, Secretary General. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I hope you are safe and you can keep safe in these hard times of COVID-19 pandemic. If you allow to me, and on behalf of the North African administrations, I would like to express my happiness when I see the Black continent takes great steps in the field of managing the radio spectrum. This scarce resource, which is one of the main pillars of the digital transformation of the continent. These steps are making Africa at the focus of the attention of all those interested in the frequency spectrum all over the world, including technology producers and major investors in the field of telecommunications. Of course, these steps will open the doors to Africa for more progress and prosperity in the future. And in this regard, I'd like to express my full support for ATU, either by myself or through my team members in the Egyptian administration, as well as the rest of the administrations of North Africa. This support had already started by nominating of my colleague, Dr. Mohammed Mughazi, to chair the task group that we are celebrating its achievements at this moment. We were full of trust that he is ultimately capable of achieving this task. Also, our support includes encouraging my colleagues to participate in the discussions and the preparation of the recommendations between our hands today. Also, I would like to express that our support will extend to ATU as long as it continues to move forward in its objective to elevate the continent. At the end, I'd like to express my gratitude to Mr. John Omo, the Secretary General of ATU, for his initiatives and congratulate him on the achievement we have today. Also, I'd like to congratulate my colleague, Dr. Mughazi, for his success in completing his great task assigned to him. And finally, I'd like to congratulate the rest of the African experts for their wonderful cooperation in bringing this recommendation to life. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wael. Of course, you know that the validation forum decided that, and this for the information of the Honorable Minister and Dr. Amani, that Dr. Mungazi will complete its work. So you need to have a kind word for us with the Egyptian administration, because there's some work that was still given to Dr. Mungazi to do in terms of implementation of these recommendations and the M&D framework. But thank you very much for your kind words. On behalf of SADC, Mr. Kweka.
Thank you very much, Mr. Omo, and a very good morning and good afternoon, depending on where you are. Reminding ourselves of where we are today. I do really appreciate the really good work that have been done by Atu Secretariat. The preparatory sessions through virtual meetings were well organized. Requests for input documents were well circulated and timely to Atu member states, and much more, those inputs were considered and incorporated in Atu spectrum recommendation. What I can say, Atu has used an engaging and effective participatory approach that has resulted to this good work to be launched this afternoon. On behalf of SADC member states, I do hereby confirm the full support of this work and much more other future works to be organized by Atu. Thank you, and thank you very much.
Victor, thank you very much, Victor, for speaking on behalf of the SADC countries. Let me now just invite in a few minutes the industry to speak. And so I'd like to call Kamal on behalf of the users, the GSMA. Kamal, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. SG, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. Honorable Minister of Telecommunications and Posts from Cameroon, the Secretary General of the ATU, Mr. John Omo, Her Excellency Commissioner Almani Abu Zaid, BR Director Mario Manuich, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, once again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We are very pleased to be here today to celebrate the launch of these set of recommendations for spectrum management in Africa. Would like to thank Atu for the critical coordination role that it has played and it continues to play in the regional ICT sector, and also in providing a platform upon which a partnership of stakeholders can be brought to bear in enabling regional socio-economic growth through telecommunications and ICT technology. Would like to congratulate all of the stakeholders, member states, private sector partners, and the ATU Secretariat for championing the development of these very, very important and critical policy and regulatory tools for the benefits of the citizens of our great continent. And in congratulating the stakeholders, I would like to particularly mention the contributions from the chairman, Mr. Al-Moghazi, and the different chapter coordinators, Mr. Sono, Mr. Alfred, Mr. Gabriel, and Mr. Wilson, and also the wisdom and the guidance that we received from KGS as well in concluding this work. The contributions that we received from the Bureau was invaluable to the work that we managed to conclude. We did put a lot of work into developing this set of recommendations, but as far as I'm concerned, we have only done the easy part. We must now all work together to drive the effective implementation of these recommendations and enable an environment where the socio-economic benefits of telecommunications can be maximized for the good of the continent. In saying that, I'm pretty sure that I speak for all of the private sector contributors to these recommendations in saying that we look forward to a committed for the opportunity to committedly participate in facilitating the implementation of these recommendations. On the final note as well, I think it would be useful to also just highlight the contribution that Ericsson has had in facilitating this work as well. I think it deserves some commendation, and would like to thank them as well for driving some of this work in partnership with ATU. So thank you very much, Mr. SG.
Thank you very much, Kamal, for speaking on behalf of the industry, in particular the GSMA, and for your kind words expressing support for this. Allow me now to invite a key partner to the ATU in the development of this framework, and that has been Ericsson. And so, Shafiq Shabolsi, if you can hear me. Yes, I see you. If you can take the floor, sir.
Thank you, sir. I hope you can all hear me properly. So, Your Excellencies, partners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It was just 10 months ago in June 2020 when we signed a Memorandum of Understanding with the ATU for developing spectrum recommendations. And it was not an easy 10 months. We are all aware of the challenges that we faced due to the pandemic during this time. With this in mind, what we have achieved together in coming up with these recommendations is nothing short of miraculous. I want to congratulate the African countries' experts, the leadership of ATU and partners that worked together to come up with this comprehensive set of recommendations. It's our belief that with proper implementation, these will help bridge the digital divide and enable ICTs for a brighter future in Africa. No one can doubt the importance of ICT for socio-economic development of a country. The recent pandemic has further highlighted the criticality of ICT and the necessity of providing broadband communication access to every African citizen. It's hard to overestimate the role of mobile broadband networks in this respect. After all, mobile broadband is probably the best way to provide this coverage. It doesn't move with the wind like certain balloons. It's there, it's structured, and it's standardized. This was acknowledged by the efforts of several policymakers across Africa who implemented measures like licensing, and additional spectrum to allow communication service providers to carry the increased traffic during the last year's pandemic. Fantastic proactive work that was done by the ATU. Through these recommendations, we see that the expert group is providing a guideline to all African nations on how to make the best and most efficient use of the limited spectrum resources. Now that you have developed the recommendations to have the journey of digital inclusion to the next level, I would like to urge you that implementation is now key. We want society to truly benefit now and transform Africa into a knowledge economy through the development of technologies that boost connectivity and innovation. I can assure you that Ericsson, as a global technology provider, will be with you. We have been in Africa for over 120 years. We are proud to have been at the forefront of providing technology and related services to connect people and communities of this wonderful continent. Over this period, we have been developing Africans to be key player in the ICT sector and partnering with African business. We will continue to do this, and we are so excited to be part of this partnership, and we're waiting eagerly for the implementation of the recommendations. So thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much for your kind words, Shafiq. Let me just get to the next phase, another high-level phase where we go towards the launching and invite our great friend and supporter, the Director of the Radio Communications Bureau, Mario, to take the floor and speak. Mario, over to you.
Thank you, John. Her Excellency, Minister of Posts and Telecommunications of Cameroon, Your Excellency, African Union Commissioner, Chairman of Atu's first preparatory meeting for WRC 23, Secretary General of the African Telecommunications Union, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. It is a pleasure for me to address you today at the official launch of the first set of the African Telecommunications Union's Spectrum Recommendations. I salute the ITU for the fulfillment of Africa's long-standing aspiration to develop regional recommendations and move towards harmonized telecommunications and ICT policies and regulatory frameworks. The launch of this set of recommendations is a demonstration of the successful coordination carried out by the African Telecommunications Union, and it shows what can be achieved when African countries collaborate and unify their positions. The work on connecting the unconnected has become essential, not only for economic reasons, but also for public health. Throughout this pandemic situation, those that were connected were able to access online services and ensure the continuity of education and business, while those that did not have access to broadband connections, the other half of the world's population, were deprived from working remotely and reducing their exposure to the virus. Thus, the importance of the work you have conducted. Dear colleagues, for over a century, the International Telecommunications Union has reviewed and revised the radio regulations, the international treaty that governs the global use of radio frequency spectrum and associated satellite orbits. The ITU also develops international standards that ensure radio communication services adhere to minimum technical requirements and operate without interference. Implementing these regulations and standards at regional and national levels is critical to building robust digital ecosystems that promote access to next-generation technologies. Though the Radio Communication Bureau and the ATU-R study groups were not directly involved in the development of this first set of Atu spectrum recommendations, we know that these recommendations were inspired by the ITU regulations and standards, and we trust that they will aid African administrations in fulfilling their international obligations under the radio regulations. Dear friends, This first set of recommendations is surely an important step towards expanding broadband connectivity and implementing the digital transformation strategy of the African Union. But to reduce the digital divide in Africa and achieve rural connectivity and universal access, we need to use all the means that we have at hand and all technologies available, whether wired or wireless, fixed or mobile, terrestrial or satellite. Therefore, while these first recommendations focus mostly on mobile broadband services, I'm confident that the sets of recommendations that will follow will address the various communication platforms that provide broadband services as well. This will help address ATU's strategic plan and will facilitate the comparison of the economic aspects of different technology options for the provision of broadband connectivity, particularly in rural and historically underserved areas. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, ATU-R study group and working party meetings are being held virtually and the work continues apace. I reiterate my encouragement for African experts to actively participate in ATU-R meetings. As you know, remote participation has removed the costs incurred in coming to Geneva and offer a unique opportunity for all members to participate in our meetings. So far, we have seen a 100% increase in participants in virtual meetings as compared to physical meetings, many of them from Africa. Since we have with us today the Minister of ICT of Cameroon and the chairman of Atu's first preparatory meeting for WRC 23, let me acknowledge the work that has been done under the auspices of the ATU. Indeed, it is excellent to see that despite the difficulties of this period of a global health crisis, ATU continues to progress steadily on the preparation of the region for WRC 23. We will soon have the exact dates and place of WRC 23, which will be held according to plan. Mr. Secretary General of the ATU, I could not end this speech without recognizing the successful collaboration of ITU's Radio Communication Bureau with the African Telecommunications Union under your leadership, Mr. Omo. A recent example of this is the implementation of the WRC 19 Resolution 559. We were very pleased to be able to assist the African region in this one-time opportunity for countries having degraded resources in the Broadcasting Satellite Service Plan to regain a better reference situation. This work resulted in 45 countries of the region submitting their filings on time. The BR is also delighted to collaborate with the ATU on the optimization of the Geneva 84 plan for African countries that aims at increasing the number of available channels for FM stations in the continent. As you can see, we have worked very closely in the past, and we will be more than happy to continue our fruitful collaboration in the future. I reassure you that the Radio Communications Bureau of the ATU is committed to support you in all radio communication related matters that would benefit the African countries. I encourage the ATU to continue its good work on the development of regional spectrum recommendations and on the achievement of Africa's strategic objectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mario, for your kind words and the assurance of always ITU being available when called upon to assist us in the development of our ICT through the use of radio communications. I thank you very much, and in particular assisting Africa, acquire and try to retain the satellite orbital loss pursuant to a WRC resolution. Thank you very much for your kind words. Allow me now to call our last and certainly by no means least of the speakers. Her Excellency, Madame Likeng, has been a great supporter of this union when called upon to preside over a number of our things. I think this is probably the fourth meeting she's presiding over since I came over to this union 2 years ago, and I sincerely want to thank her for that. So, Madame, Your Excellency Likeng, if you can kindly take the floor, and then after your speech, we'll play a short clip. Thank you very much.
Merci, Monsieur le Secrétaire Général.
Thank you, Secretary General, of the African Telecommunications Union, the director of the Radio Communications Bureau of the ITU, the representative of the chair of the African Union Commission, ladies and gentlemen, the representatives of member states of the African Telecommunications Union, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of associate members of the African Telecommunications Union, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of regional economic communities, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of regulator associations, ladies and gentlemen, representatives of partners, industrial partners, the representative of different entities, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. It is for me a great honor, a new sense of pride to take the floor today as the Minister of Post and Telecommunication of the government of the Republic of Cameroon during this ceremony of the launch of the first set of recommendations on spectrum written under the auspices of the African Telecommunications Union with Ericsson as a partner. I will, as I start my speech on behalf of the Cameroonian government, wish a warm welcome to the collective members that responded to the invitation by ATU and its partners. And may you allow me to thank as well the ATU for the choice of Cameroon to chair the current sittings on behalf of the governments of our continent. Even if we are holding this meeting in unique circumstances where humanity is confronted with COVID-19 pandemic, the context of this health crisis in which this event is happening gives me an opportunity to wish you and the populations of your countries good health. As at the closure of the work of the African preparatory meeting for the World Conference of Telecommunication and the meeting held on 3rd and 7th August, I pointed out the commitment of ATU to the achievement of the set objectives that pointed out a bright future for the regional organization as a true opportunity for cooperation, for the promotion of an appropriate framework for drafting policies and strategies that are effective, targeting the improvement of access to infrastructure and services of information in order to meet the demands of development of activities of telecommunications as well as the expectations of users. This current function, it is a perfect illustration of this to the extent that it allows us to present a result that is tangible, concrete result of the decisions that were made at the preparatory meeting for the 23rd preparatory meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, the 23rd regional meeting put forward a decision creating 5 specialized groups on the following: spectrum recommendations, emerging technologies, spectrum for connectivity of rural areas, the management strategy for satellite resources, the African plan for the sharing of spectrum. Through this mechanism, experts from our continent had the duty to propose a favorable framework for the use of spectrum resources vis-a-vis the decisions of the Radio Telecommunication Conference and the World Conference for Radio Communication that happened in Sharm el-Sheikh in 2019. We are meeting here today to launch historically the publication of the first set of recommendations on spectrum produced within ATU. These recommendations constitute a very important guide for our administrations in the improvement of the management of spectrum and radio electric frequencies in a context of a high demand for these resources, but which resources are very critical for the deployment of emerging technologies, critical for our populations, so that we can liberate them. The meeting that has brought us together allows us to celebrate the African skills and competences that have been able to transpose at the continental level the decisions that have been taken at a global level. This has been done on the basis of best practices within the continent and beyond. And this ought to be a source of inspiration for other countries of the continent in order to improve the management of frequencies in a context where challenges are becoming more and more complex. We are now coming up with a wish that the tools that have been put forward by African experts be used effectively for tangible results for the good of our populations that are demanding for quality services. With regard to Cameroon, the head of state, His Excellency Paul Biya, has never stopped to encourage and to support the implementation of skills and competences in the line of technology, ICT areas. The initiatives that the Cameroonian government has taken through the Ministry of Posts and Telecommunications, that is targeting, among others, to promote and offering services of high quality, access to all to ICT, governance, and an ICT and digital competence for all. Allow me, for another time, to congratulate the African Telecommunications Union for efforts put forward on a daily basis to ensure easy access to our populations to ICT services and technological services in radio telecommunications on our continent. Through the results that are flowing from this, the area of radio communication confirms all its importance. We can only encourage you to persist in your efforts and to go forward in the conquest and the mastery of emerging technologies necessary for development for future networks, which need to propel the continent to the global standards. We need to keep the hope, and with the agreement and support of ATU member states, meeting through the auspices of economic communities, I now hereby declare the first set of recommendations on spectrum of the ATU relating to spectrum audit, distribution of licenses for use of spectrum for mobile large band services, the evolution of spectrum for large band mobile services, and the principles of spectrum management on the national plans for large broadband spectrum, roadmap for the distribution of spectrum, and the roadmap for emerging and future technologies, which makes me ask our administrations to own this up for its effective implementation. Live international cooperation, long live the partnership ATU Ericsson, long live the regional integration and the African Union in the area of radio communication. Thank you very much for your keen attention.
Thank you very much, Excellency Minister, for your kind words and for launching these recommendations formally. We'll now spend a few minutes in seeing a clip about the same. Thank you very much for it wasn't quite a clip, but a short of a PowerPoint presentation. We have received requests to share the same, and we will do so with the participants. So allow me once again to thank you, Honorable Minister, for being our guest today and for launching these recommendations, as you say. It behooves us to, not just work on these recommendations, but implement them. And so the task group on spectrum recommendations chaired by Dr. Mungazi will develop an implementation plan and conduct extensive publication of these recommendations. And together with our partner Ericsson, we will meet the heads of regulators and operators in an effort to create awareness and understanding of these recommendations so as to encourage adoption. And we'll do this through several avenues, including sub-regional roundtables. But once more, allow me to thank you for presiding over the launch of these recommendations, and to also thank Her Excellency, the Commissioner and the Director of BR for being here and giving us the support that is necessary. This we do as part and parcel of the AU family in terms of efforts to realize the African digital agenda. Allow me also to recognize the role that the private sector has played in this regard, and to thank them sincerely, especially those that are working in Africa. Thank them sincerely for lending a hand in the development of these recommendations. Oftentimes, the private sector sees the public sector as picking at them and not collaborating with them. And we just want to recognize this collaborative effort and the work that has gone into this, and in particular the task group for a job that is well done. We do hope that as we implement them, we will continue to update them regularly in terms of the technological developments that come on board. Allow me also to recognize the public international organizations that have participated in this. ITU in particular, I have just seen that the Director General of ITSO is present in this meeting. I'm sorry I didn't recognize your presence earlier, but we thank you for your team's contribution in the development of these recommendations. We still have a lot of work that is going on where, public international organizations such as yours will be involved. And so allow me to thank each and every one of you for attending this launch session, and to hope that working together we can travel further and achieve more as Africa. As part of our celebration of girls in ICT, Alice is taking a record of representation of ladies in this meeting. And of course, as is our practice, we will write to the ministers of the first 3 countries that whose representation in terms of number 1, number 2, and 3, just to thank them and to encourage them to continue supporting ladies, especially in the area of radio communications. Again, as I say, we'll share this presentation with you. And so as I conclude, I sincerely thank all of you, especially for presiding over this meeting, Honorable Minister, and for the technical team that has worked in developing these recommendations. Great work still lies ahead in terms of their implementation. And so let's work together, both the public and the private sector, in ensuring their implementation. So thank you very much. That's all from us today. And we still have some 5 minutes which we can use to leave the meeting, but I sincerely want to thank you very, very much, each and every one of you, for your support and for supporting this very process. Thank you very much, and wish you the very best in your tasks after this. And so this marks the end of this meeting. Thank you very much once again. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.